Please join me in welcoming Dom Joseph, co-founder and CEO of Captify, Emma Armstrong, MD of New York for iCrossing, Jed Dietrich runs biz dev for The Trade Desk, and Laura Rossi here, CMO of OMD. Please join me. Welcome everybody here. Thanks. So let's get started. We've got a pretty meaty topic that could go about 14 ways, engaging and converting the audiences you never knew existed. A lot of the theme here is around separating perception and reality, and certainly the perception that we've spent 12 years in programmatic media and about 22 years in digital media, nailing the audiences that we already know that we have might be a little bit of a myth. There still might be some work to do. We're going to talk about going beyond media and maybe even talking about creative, believe it or not, and how engaging those audiences with different messaging might be advantageous. But let's do quick intros. You can see lovely photos with titles. So let's go down from your left to right, and just Dom, give us a quick snapshot of where Captify and for each of your companies maybe has been tackling this and maybe showing a little bit of uniqueness around identifying some of these audiences that might be a little either hidden or tougher to find.
Okay, yeah, I'm Dom, the co-founder and CEO of Captify. We founded the business about 7 years ago with the idea of bringing search data into the world of display, and we've, over the last 7 years, we have been powering media executions and insights for brands all over the world, and we came to the US a couple of years ago, which is a whole new challenge, and we're now in New York, Chicago, and Boston, expanding fast over here. So we've kind of had the principle of trying to find a really good quality data set that can then inform media buys, and we pretty much started our business with realizing that search data was incredibly powerful for understanding intent of consumers and what they are specifically looking for and when. And over the last couple of years, we've expanded the product to realize that actually there was more value from the search data than just a targeting mechanism. And that value is looking at the insights from that data and getting a window into the inner lives of consumers, and then helping to inform the strategy that the brand might have.
Cool. So we'll get into that in a little bit. Thank you. So Emma, relatively new, within a year at iCrossing with Mr. Ratner and a lot of other longtime friends there. Give us a sense of iCrossing's positioning, because a lot of folks who may not be working with you day to day might also know of you as, oh yeah, those are the search guys. They were hardcore into that, but a little bit more involved there at iCrossing now, right?
Sure. So we were founded a little longer ago than Captify, 20 years ago, one of the first search agencies. And that was really our bread and butter for the first 5 or 6 years. But a little bit like Captify, you look at search, you see the insight that it brings, and the deep knowledge that you can get about the customer. And then what we rapidly found was you can take that and broaden it out into other areas of digital, and then marketing and creative. So we're now a fully fledged all things digital agency, from media through to brand consulting, data analytics, and everything in between.
Cool, thank you. Jed Dietrich, publicly traded The Trade Desk with Jeff Green and a lot of good folks there. Give us a sense, biz dev for the whole practice, or biz dev for a specific division, because you guys have been aggressively expanding into China and television, and we'll talk about some of the insights among different countries or regions of the world and engaging these audiences. But give us the remit for you.
Sure. So I'm lead biz dev for North America. Certainly do a lot of conversations, expanding and helping global brands and global agencies evaluate new markets. I mean, our investments in China and in global growth in offices in 13 countries around the world has been a huge focus for us as a company. But really what we do is focus on creating the best demand-side platform for global agencies and brands to evaluate this huge connected ecosystem. So when we're talking about finding ways to message your audience and control their experience of your brand, the role we play in that is connecting the audience to a connected ecosystem where we're able to be, person-based and household-based in our messaging capabilities, and then also giving you all of the data back about what happened when your customers engaged with your advertising.
Nice. So we'll talk about identity mapping in a little bit with you. I know just only about 78 questions that I have for you about that. So let's conclude here with Laura on intro. So as a proud OMD alum, 24 years and about 40 pounds ago, started their digital media practice at BBDO back in the day. Always neat to see the continuous rise and global success of OMD. Give us a sense, CMO of OMD. So you represent just the OMD brand and positioning versus other agencies on client pitches, or it's working on different skill sets and attributes and the product set of OMD. What's that seems like three large letters at a large company.
Fantastic. Well, I see Omnicom has done well by you. Fantastic. You're doing
Very proud.
Fantastically. Thank you
Yeah.
for having me. I joined about 6 months ago, and as one of the large legacy media companies, I seem to have joined at the right time. We just launched our people-based precision marketing platform in September, and coming from the creative world, that confluence of data and technology is really starting to work for us. I focus on marketing the company, but more importantly, I focus on business development. And what's really ripe and wonderful about that is we get to take on new challenges. And I would say that 9 out of 10 customers who are coming to talk to us are talking about the confluence of brand and performance.
Nice. So yeah, let's talk about that some of that difference, because classic, we had a bank client where they still had separate teams a couple years ago, and they still do to a certain degree now, with a separate brand team with audience targets and KPIs and budgets and staff and data silos there, and then they have a performance team for card acquisition doing the same thing, and they rarely shared any data there. How has it been in terms of having the practice of a global agency kind of look to bring those together a little bit more? Because don't you think that if we're talking about one audience who's along a customer journey at various stages, either top of the funnel, bottom of the funnel, done with the funnel, loyal, 10-year loyalist to any of your clients, isn't it necessary to kind of try to bring those pieces together a little bit more? How's OMD been doing it on a macro basis?
It absolutely is. I think, it is a tough time for marketers from that standpoint. You've got silos on the client side. You've traditionally had silos on the agency side. We've broken down those silos on our side, obviously. And the change management aspect of the assignments are actually very gratifying and actually more challenging sometimes than the actual merging of the data, the KPIs, et cetera. And so often we find ourselves in the change management business. One of the things that I think is really confounding for our business right now is, in a world where you're looking for efficiency and effectiveness at the same time, the answer is it always goes back to the audience. It always goes back to the consumer, and I know that's a big part of our topic today. So
yeah, for sure. And Jed, so speaking about matching that data and the KPIs, I mean, you guys have had a lot of effort around identity mapping and being able to, once you've engaged one person, part of a large set within an audience segment, being able to then translate that into other media, not just across the Trade Desk platform, but allowing clients who use you for a lot of their digital and then might use some other services. How is that stitching going so far? Because as we all know, there are a few companies, publishers/platforms, that make it a little more challenging than some of the others to be able to take your data and run with it across the board.
Yep, couple big holdouts.
Yeah.
No, but it's been one of the greatest areas of investment for the Trade Desk, and we have this real advantage, which is objectivity, in that we solely represent buyers, and in no part of our business do we optimize yield on behalf of any publishers, and in also being just a B2B company and not like a company that has a giant search engine or a huge social platform. We don't sit on top of any PII. In fact, we contractually borrow it from our platform. So when we think about ID sharing, we're really well positioned to help with that and establish a common sense of identity on the internet, so that when a brand or an agency has decided this is my valuable audience, this is who I want to speak to, the question of connecting to that person within their household and connected television, on their mobile device, whether they're at work, that's something that we spend a lot of time focusing on, and also rallying this huge fragmented but open ecosystem around common IDs, so that match rates go up, so that things like frequency capping are possible, so we're not driven nuts by ads. But to your point, the fragmentation of the space has meant that there are a few big places that don't play.
Yeah, so 3 out of $4 go to 3 companies or so right now in the U.S. With digital today, for what we're still calling digital. You're talking about an open ecosystem with the other 25%, and the Xandr guys last week at their show talked about maybe creating a community garden and didn't seem too specific about how closed or open that would be. So that's another potential large player in television and digital there. So is the landscape right now, it's fantastic, open ecosystem for 25% of dollars and audiences, and challenge with 75? Is there room to kind of bring
Sure.
that back? Are you hearing clients that are pushing you to push back on those 3 or 4 companies to say, look, we're going to move dollars if you don't open up because it's just too handicapped right now, and frankly the audiences suffer?
Well, it's our clients who are pushing back,
Yeah.
and they're the ones who are saying, how they would like to plan their media is around a connected ecosystem where they can control consumer exposure to ads. And we have a trust issue in advertising that has to do with the poor experience of consumers with our advertising. And fragmentation is largely to blame for that problem. If there's 3 different frequency caps and they're all 3 per 24, that's 9 per 24, right? So that problem is why major brands want to be able to control things like frequency and attribution across the whole ecosystem. And so you mentioned, 25% of audience, and the reality is, no one publisher or 2 publishers for that matter are nearly as big as a connected and global ecosystem. I mean, look at China. Half of the world's internet population is in China, and they're not on those platforms. And so I think it's important to think about all of the opportunities that are possible through platforms that don't wall things off before you think about, all right, now I need to backfill, and I believe my audience is on Amazon, or I believe my audience is on Facebook. Important places to advertise, not saying they're not.
So related to that, Emma, I wanted to ask you about attribution models, and without getting too wonky on the media side, just about the capabilities and what you're hearing clients asking of Media Crossing, of iCrossing, excuse me. We've been planting a flag saying that 2019 is going to be the first year of attribution, where a lot of folks kind of wake up and realize that there have been some rules and some scoring set up maybe to favor a few folks. And the same way we had, how many was it, 13 years of the year of mobile?
That's exactly what I was going to say. We're still in the year of mobile.
No. We ended that, I thought, last year. I think we're finally 13 years. It was good. But yeah, I mean, so it might be 10 years of attribution. But I'm just curious how with the capabilities of iCrossing being able to handle, all touch points now, how do you know if the media team uses different attribution models, whatever the client brings? Is our point of view from iCrossing and the parent company on this? Because certainly you've got insights into where a lot is happening. It might just be tough to directly correlate cause and effect, right?
No, you're 100% correct. And I love your question to Laurel as well in terms of the different silos on clients, because once you start that conversation about multi-touch attribution, you immediately start pulling into some of those client silos. And a bit like
it can get awkward.
Very awkward very quickly, because people have their own budgets and they're very attached to their budgets and their jobs, as they should be. So we're finding that is absolutely top of mind for clients. Dollars are less. We need to be more efficient and more performance-based with those dollars. So how can we prove that we are and we're driving ROI, or whatever the objectives ultimately are, the KPIs are? It has to come down to some sort of connected multi-touch attribution model. We haven't found one solution that works perfectly. No one has yet, but that's definitely where we're starting to move towards.
So you're saying opportunity and need for a third-party attribution model service that hasn't been acquired by one of 3 companies in the last 5 years.
We still start a business, yes.
Yeah, so happened to capture a lot of media share. Okay, good. Yeah. Hey, Dom, so tell us about the search intent data. Obviously, a pretty massive signal, has been for 20 years since search has been around. I mean, what are can you share some of the insights that you've found with your clients around, interesting to know that they searched over here and then they executed something else over there, because clearly one or a couple of search companies have captured pretty decent share there, but it's also been impactful, obviously, in generating a lot of other full funnel movement to be able to spur other media dollars and insights for buyers, right?
Yeah, I mean, search is, without doubt, one of the highest levels of the hierarchy of data that's available for understanding a consumer. Is seen as being dominated by Google, but actually there's an awful lot of search data out there, especially on-site search data, which is really good quality data.
A couple of retailers have a little bit of search going on.
Yeah, exactly. And you can really understand the inner life of the consumer, the needs of a consumer. And when we look at all the different data sets available to a brand marketer or to a brand or an agency to try and understand what consumers want, you have social data, which can be very useful. It can be very accurate as to what a consumer wants, but actually a lot of the time there's a lot of mistruth there behind what a consumer is saying on social.
Can you give an example for these guys in a particular vertical?
Well, I mean,
without calling out.
A consumer might well like a Ferrari, but barely be able to afford an Uber Black. But
Yes.
So it's there's a million different examples of that.
Yeah.
And obviously you've got all the antiquated measurement tools and data sets that have been used for many years, panel-based survey data. Even contextual data is still pretty limited in really understanding what a consumer wants. But then you have a couple of sources of truth which are very, very powerful, such as obviously search data, but also transaction data and post-purchase data. And when that's combined, and going back to the point about trying to create an identity solution that kind of helps that all become mapped together, then it can be very effective for understanding that customer path.
Yep. So I want to. We're less than halfway in, and I always have a goal to try to get creative further up the agenda, because it's always, I don't know how many panels you've been on. Creative's always the last question, it seems like. Oh, by the way, yeah, the right message. Let's talk about creative, and then you run out of time and everyone leaves. So Laurel, a pretty good creative shop. When I was at BBDO, our creative team, award-winning, Joe Pitka and guys doing Pizza Hut and HBO and Visa and Pepsi ads. We're on the 5th floor. The media team was on the 4th floor. We were all together. In a world where brands have split the vote often between, media, okay, this agency gets media, this agency gets creative, and you're supposed to play in the sandbox well, but, shareholders often are telling you you're supposed to hate each other and fight. So it can be challenging. I'm curious how, at a big place like OMD, has data been able to kind of permeate into the creative departments at all to be able to give them insights? Because I remember when we were 1995 trying to tell people, oh yeah, you can make these great 468 by 60 banners, and people who were making 30-second spots for the Super Bowl would just laugh at us and be like, you can get out of the office now. We're not going to waste our time with that. Have you noticed a shift at OMD where their storytelling has changed a little bit with some insights, or is it still kind of, I make 30-second spots, I make billboard ads, I make print ads, I make digital ads, and the segmentation and all this other crazy stuff about data is just over here?
Very rich area.
Yeah.
Couple things. One is, I think from an Omnicom perspective, I think the walled off experiences both for the client. Well, first of all, it's not going to fly for clients anymore, so that doesn't happen. The real glue, I think, across the enterprise, if you will, is context. One of the things that data has brought to everybody is the contextual importance of what the questions are, not just from the audiences and the consumers. We're looking for consumer signals, but we're actually going a little bit further upstream, and we have our hypotheses, we have our client problems. So I'll give you a quick example. We're thinking about our Cigna client who's trying to get people well, and think about well care. Well, when you go all the way upstream and you've got a wealth of knowledge and insight, and you are looking for the signals that consumers are sending you that they are actually willing to take the leap, those signals translate into creative pretty quickly. When you can back that up with unbiased data, and you can share those signals across the enterprise, then people are actually fighting to do the creative, meaning, we've got our content teams who are looking at long form, we've got traditional advertising that's going into the marketplace, and actually it's become a lot easier because we're the brokers with the signals, we're the brokers with the information.
And you don't hear, the typical excuse, oh, well, HIPAA compliance, we're not able to use that data, that's a third rail, and so, we just have to make a standard, are you feeling this way, and then have an hour of disclaimers. It sounds like that's a very different proactive aggressiveness around building messaging based on intent provided by audiences.
For sure. Well, WellCare's a different animal, having spent a lot of time in pharma.
Sure.
Very familiar with the subject.
Check the LinkedIn she has. Yeah.
But I do think that the contextual relevance of the information and serving up information that isn't as direct as do this now, buy this now, act this way now, has helped us a lot. And I think that kind of finesse across an organization is really what wins at the end of the day, and the KPIs are proving it out.
Nice. So, Jed, Trade Desk doesn't have a DCO dynamic creative optimization tool yet, right?
That's true. Yep.
Okay, for you M&A fans out there, might want to call Jeff Green or Jed. But so you guys have nailed media pretty well. Tell us about television, because we've, I think, danced around it a little bit here, and that always, there always seems to be. We think the word digital eventually goes away because all media becomes digital. We think programmatic goes away because most standardized media, if not all of it, is going to be programmatic. But today we still have this TV world with addressability not at 100% yet in the United States or globally. How are you finding the utilization of the Trade Desk with television, being able to identify audiences and then carry that forward into channels on the phone or laptop right now?
I think that we've been really public, and some of the most bullish numbers we've ever shared in our earnings have been around television. So, between 2017 and 2016, we saw 2,100% growth in terms of the supply that was available in internet-connected TV. So as you saw, skinny bundles like Sling TV, 95% live television, just people watching TV and access to the ads they're seeing when they're watching football on Sundays and things like that. DirecTV Now and Hulu. There's a tremendous tipping point in terms of the supply that's available in internet-connected TV. And if you guys are like me and you spend a lot of time streaming television, you know that marketers haven't fully taken advantage of that yet. And so what followed that growth in supply was 1,000% growth in marketer demand on our platform. The quarter next, we doubled. So there's a true tipping point here in terms of the supply that's available and marketers taking advantage of it. And what's directly correlated to the growth of demand has been that the huge majority of that buying on our platform has been audience driven. So the ability to target a household that's correlated with a first-party audience or a third-party audience, and also frequency cap TV, which is like, nerding out a little bit, that's the thing I'm most excited about, is frequency cap television. Because now we're talking about actual, instead of 19 ads a pod and the experience we've all had of seeing the same thing over and over again, you get greater reach at lower frequencies and a better consumer experience. So all of that has come together to be a huge piece of the growth of our business.
So I'm curious, I want to pick up a word Laurel used, and pun intended, used in a different context. So she was talking about context at OMD, and I'm curious about the contextual placements in television, if there's a there yet where it's been proven out, because we've always said that we've done a pretty good job with programmatic ad buying, finding audiences no matter where the publisher or where the audience is for 12 years. We're now starting to remember, oh yeah, context actually matters, and having a brand within a particular editorial environment and situation kind of means more than zero. So not just from a brand safety defensive position, but putting this around this great publisher, this great editorial environment. Are those boxes that are being checked in the DSP today on television, or is that coming later, but right now, just, oh my God, people haven't been able to buy anything outside of demos, so let's just give them that first, and they're already seeing upside?
The measurement is very rich. So, on top of Nielsen having the ability to measure incremental reach on top of linear TV from connected TV, which we've seen huge incremental reach from cord cutters, you also have all of the bid stream data. I mean, this is programmatic, and so content is certainly a signal. But you also have the evolved forms of measurement that has become available with programmatic. So you have things like the ability to tie purchase level data or in-store foot traffic or test drives of cars to a television ad for the first time. So we have a big global food and beverage company who's done a test between some of the big streaming services of which drive the most lift in in-store purchases. And they've done that comparison, and certainly content in context of where they've showed ads has been a part of the insights.
And the publishers get that back to be able to see?
Yeah.
Here's how you did. You ranked 4th?
Yep, and it has everything to do with how those companies are approaching their buys with them.
Nice. I want to ask about great stuff on being able to measure in-store a little bit better. You have quite a bit of background around classic brand awareness, which is going through its own evolution from a measurement standpoint, and the audiences that are found. I mean, typically it's like we were describing with the bank. It used to be kind of separate team, and all right, you want to drive desire over here with this set of tactics and creatives, and then over here you've got the cost per whatever, not M. How is that evolving? And I'm curious about the measurement that you've seen around what the new brand awareness insights are, because I think a lot of us in the room have done the old school dynamic logic, 15 years of, oh, it was a 7% lift. Well, yeah, it should have been, because people saw the ad and then they hadn't before. So yeah, you'd think some are going to remember that, right?
Yep. Great question. I like to think of it in two different ways. One, engagement, and the other is value. So, really, rather than looking at some of the more traditional measures, what we do is look at the entire journey from an engagement point of view, figure out where points of tension are or points of opportunity are, and what unlocking those might mean for a brand, and then what's the measurement that you can really use to figure out if you're being successful.
So can you share like an example of like what's the dashboard look like for the points of tension? Like what is that? What does your team look at and go, that's an issue. Okay, let's isolate them and then deliver something else there.
Great question. I can't draw you a picture of a dashboard. For me, it's almost higher than a dashboard. I mean, the components of the dashboard, we figure out. Yeah. It's more about taking that journey and figuring out what shifting that really means, and then kind of how the health measures and stuff can kind of fit under that. But I think the biggest opportunity is looking at that high-level journey, figuring out there's a point of tension here. If we can move that and shift it along the journey this way or shift it along the journey this way, then the ultimate dashboard is business success and money and ROI, and that's where you really start to see the benefit. Dashboards are just a way of figuring out if you're moving the needle on the business.
I was saying, like, what are the KPIs? Like, what are the columns that say, this equals tension? I was just.
Honestly, it's different for
every client, right?
Yeah. Sorry, that's not a very good answer.
Hey, Dom, curious about that same separation. Are you finding clients are using search data? I mean, you'd think stereotypically they'd be just bottom of the funnel, and this is a DR thing, and great, we're going to take that and then push them the last 10% to be able to cha-ching on that. Has it been used? I mean, how's this story been evolving this for moving on brand as well, or being able to have certain signals and all right, they're searching for this. This will probably be the next thing they're looking for.
Well, I mean, certainly, I think search data and this kind of data has been used now in brand advertising more and more. And it's been used as a pre-campaign insight that can then be used to then effectively measure throughout the advertising journey. And I think that's something that's relatively new in the space to do effectively. And I think that insight can actually now inform not only creative, and I think we're seeing more and more of that. It can actually completely inform the audience strategy in a way that very large existing brands never knew about. So a lot of brands are very distracted by their existing preconceptions of what their audience should be. And actually, the reality is that audience changes in real time. It changes all the time based off location, based off all sorts of different parameters. And it can start to use data now to react to that. We've been doing some work with Procter & Gamble, and we're just doing a white paper on one of their existing hair brands called, shampoo brands called Aussie Girl. And Aussie Girl, 15 years old as a brand, and it's been well established that they market to young, trendy girls going to festivals, the influential millennial. And when we actually looked at the search data around that brand and that product, we actually noticed that actually the most highly affiliated search term with Aussie Girl was actually Pampers diapers. So it's completely different to what people expect. So they actually realized that actually Aussie Girl has now grown up to Aussie Woman.
Right, I was going to say, those are hopefully loyalists, not talking about a teen pregnancy issue or something.
Yeah, exactly. But it helps to then unlock future strategies for the brand that help them essentially get more from their investment.
Nice, very cool, very cool. All right, we've gone in order here a little bit. This is kind of a who wants to take this one, or so. Let's talk about obviously we've talked a little bit about measurement and how folks keep score. There's in this country there's been one company that for about 50 years has been pretty dominant around measurement and identifying audiences based solely to your point, Dom, maybe a little more limited on just age and gender. And I think we've seen enough examples here of where that might be a little more challenged today. Do we still feel like there's some directional value there? Are we getting to the point? Do you have insights? I'm guessing the Trade Desk might with the software TV-based buying, but certainly other agencies around. How we're doing a town hall on something that we're calling Next Nielsen. No disrespect to Nielsen, it could be Nielsen, but maybe there's a better way to break through. And is it just a matter of Jed? Do you think we just need to? And anybody else who wants to toss toss a thought on this. Do we just have to wait to the point where it's all addressable TV and IP generated, and then okay, we'll flip over to digital measurement, or is there maybe a little bit where we need to bring the best of both together and have it be like chocolate and peanut butter here?
Yeah, the reality today is that it's a better together scenario.
Okay.
Because of how much reach linear TV has. I mean, if I were buying, I certainly would buy linear TV too. But and to their credit, they've established a trusted common language about reach and frequency against agreed upon audience targets. And so now what we've talked a lot about today is how an advertiser agency can build their own audience target and decide that this is my valuable audience, which is more multidimensional than age and gender. And then the movement that we've seen come with a really connected television, but has applied to the other connected channels that are available, is about planning and measuring reach and frequency against those audience targets, right? So I have decided that these are my brand loyalists. These are the people who will never buy anything from me, and this is everybody else. And so I'm going to message my brand loyalists carefully, and I'm going to go after everybody else with a more aggressive plan. And in so doing, I've created a better use of my dollars, and I'm going to use frequency capping and reach frequency measurement to know that I'm increasing reach at optimal frequencies, and in many cases, really lowering costs.
Anybody else want to jump in on the measurement? We're good? All right. I want to ask about, since we don't have any brands here intentionally, let's talk about them. So what do you get a sense from your media teams are the hardest challenges? I mean, we all can talk about how the average CMO lifespan is getting a little bit shorter as we go, and more challenges from the CFO and CEO around accountability there. Do you get a sense, Laurel, that the time of, to Jed's point, what we were talking about earlier, one message kind of blasted out to everyone, get your reach and frequency curves lined up, and then, okay, we hit a number of GRPs, so we're good. What are some of the sort of next level challenges that, your top brands are asking agencies today around finding their own audiences, or is it a different issue altogether?
Well, two things. One is, the name of this talk is engaging and converting audiences you never knew existed. And so I think if you take a step back, and then I'll address your client question. When you take a step back, we have a big install base of customers and understand across multiple categories, multiple platforms, how people in general behave. And so the search for new discovery, new audiences is the top of everybody's list, right? If you can bring that to the table, you're golden. I know
because it's always easy to retarget, but the most expensive and the hardest challenge are the new customers, obviously, right?
And that brings me to your question. I think the thing that most of our clients are being held to is a standard around: are you really being efficient? Are you really being effective? And where's the waste? And so that is probably the question in the pure media world that gets asked most often. I find that when we are able to use not just a dashboard, to Emma's point, but also the attributions and the drivers and bring those to the table, I find our CMOs in particular have a very important talk off, with their boards, with their CEOs, et cetera. I think that as the world gets more addressable, that when scale comes into play, this will all, to some degree go away. But in the meantime, the biggest question that's being now asked is about efficiency.
Makes sense. About 5 minutes ago, you guys know you can submit questions to the app. I don't know if we had any to flash up. We certainly didn't want to discount any of the folks here in the audience to contribute and ask some questions. And until, boom, look at that, right on cue. Very nice, thanks. So let's see. Why don't we start with the GDPR question, because that was going to be one of the last that we got to anyway. So perfect timing there. Thank you, Anonymous, and with a couple of likes. So we got 5 more likes nodding up here on stage. So so we're in a post GDPR world. We're in a pre CCPA California world. We're in a pre e-privacy world that should put some finer language around what you can and can't do. curious where the balance is. I mean, we're helping some publishers now kind of get back some of their European audiences post GDPR, where they just pulled the plug out and said, hey, it's too risky, we don't want to deal with it. And now they're realizing they'd like that revenue back. I'm curious, from certainly the agencies here, if you can comment about how the landscape has been either more restrictive or sometimes maybe even easier, I guess, in terms of, well, there are only so many places you can go, or has it made it more difficult to navigate, how you can go and find those audiences given the various rules throughout the global ecosystem today?
It's a great question, and I think as an industry, we're all still figuring our way through what it truly means and all the implications. Two different things. One, it means for us, insights are even more important. Truly, what are you trying to attitudinally find these people are sparking to, and how can you do that en masse? Two, the conversation we're really having with our clients is how do you create your own great source of first-party data, and then how do you create value with that brand that means that people will want to give you more of that data, and that really is because this is. It looks as if this is only going to continue. If you're a brand, forget about your product. You really need to provide value to your consumer. If you can do that, people will give you their data. If you can then be respectful with it, and then give them more value back. So that's really the conversation we're having more and more frequently with our clients. It's really a return to the importance of first-party data.
Related to that, Jed, when a couple of companies happened to pull the plug on the log files of all DoubleClick campaign management on, I think, May 24th or something like that, one day
Who's
before.
counting?
Conveniently, we remember we were with an agency client when someone ran in, and it was as if war had started or something. Like, we just got a call from Google, and oh my God, kind of thing. Are you finding that clients are kind of saying, hey, this is now a nice little moment where we should rally around a universal ID that is fully opt-in, that we consumers know what the game is. We welcome the personalization. We know from content and marketing this is better to have than going back pre-2007, let's say, when we had some of us old timers might remember how awful online advertising was in the 90s and early 2000s. Can we have that balance? And are you hearing clients saying, hey, Trade Desk, you guys seem to be certainly one tech company, but independent in that you could rally around this universal ID. And even though one company temporarily, hopefully, pulled out in AppNexus a couple weeks ago, is there enough there to, in a post-GDPR world, be able to appropriately stitch this together for everyone?
Yeah, certainly that was a huge topic, and it was a moment where, what we've believed from the beginning, which was needing to be objective and fully buy-side aligned, and keep all the deterministic and PII sensitive data out of our system, was really important. And so we have seen, the big sophisticated advertisers who understand that their advantage going forward is being smarter about their audiences, how they interact with ads, and taking advantage of all the capabilities to do that well, know that they want to own the data associated with how their audiences interact with their advertising. And that's basically what was taken away, was being able to take that out of systems for reach frequency management, for audience segmentation purposes, for tying things to offline sales. I mean, this is really all of the cool stuff we've talked about so far now has to live within that ecosystem, or you can work with a partner who will share those IDs with you. Certainly that's been a huge, huge conversation this year, but I also just want to zoom out for a second and to the GDPR point say, I think a lot of us are focused on how can we make advertising better. We probably believe that data can make advertising better than what you're describing in 2007, but we have this trust issue, and by collectively chasing down things like GDPR and aggressively making sure that we're in full compliance with those things while improving consumers' experience of our advertising online by not driving them nuts with overfrequency and things like that. I mean, I think that's how we improve advertising through the use of data that is fully legally compliant and people are comfortable sharing.
Nice. Last quick, classic last panel question. We're up here a year from now. if we're privileged to be asked back, and it's a year back, and around this same topic, where has it gotten better in a year, either within your own firm or in the industry in general, in terms of being able to identify audiences? Wow, a year ago we couldn't do this, or a year ago it was a lot harder to do that, but now, either at our own organization or throughout the industry, a couple of things have happened. Help give us a little optimism of where the future is going to be and how we're still trending in the right direction.
Sure. Seamless, much more seamless integration of third and first party data. And also, I think the one thing that we haven't talked a ton about today, but I feel like our marketing is getting much more empathetic. And I think next year we will be having a totally different conversation that centers around empathy.
Nice. A little more on the emotional side. Very good. Jen?
I think I love those points, and I hope that we're sitting here talking about how measurement has changed, and we've started to create trust as a group in a few new cool forms of measurement that start to take advantage of how we're reaching and engaging with these new audiences we've discovered.
Stuff, Emma?
All awesome points. I think going back to the very first question, and Laurel, you touched on it, I would love to say that clients are breaking down their own silos to get to a better either data sharing or multi-touch attribution model, and really being efficient in themselves about how they're thinking about going to market rather than maintaining those silos. Because I think we all bump up against them, and it's a big opportunity.
Indeed. Dom, what else gets better?
Yeah, I think clients using data to inform strategy, inform creative, using dynamic data, so reacting in real time rather than using static segments. I think a better holistic measurement across all channels. I think agencies are going to have to get a lot better at that, and I think that's going to see. So we've seen a huge difference in that in the US compared to Europe, and that's definitely progressing. And I think clearly the convergence of TV and digital is going to create a whole lot of opportunity. It's the area that the duopoly don't own, and that's pretty exciting for everyone.
Pretty exciting. Some work to do, but a lot of upside. Well, hopefully we've engaged and converted a few of you in the audience here today. So thank you for your time. Please join me in thanking our panelists, Dom, Emma, Jed, and Laurel.